reams of things written about how much money I make. Do I deserve it? Do I not deserve it?
Bruce Willis on the trouble with being a box office star.
It's a more sophisticated moment than, my child, my husband, my life. To me, I think that's more interesting than the big flashy, guerrilla numbers.
Jodie Foster on how not to act.
I do the least wanted commodity in movies, which is called acting.
Michael Caine on What's Wrong with Hollywood. Three top talents discuss the art of acting and the business of being a star with Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert on the Siskel and Ebert Special.
Movie actors work in full view of everyone in the theater, and yet the magic of their performance often remains a mystery. On this special hour-long program called Actors on Acting, we asked three of the most articulate actors in the movies to talk about their methods and philosophies. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune, and critics don't write much about acting, and the general audience doesn't understand how it's done. So we've picked a mixed bag of talented actors to learn from. One trained classically in English theater, one American actress who's never had an acting lesson in her life, and one actor who has graduated from off-Broadway to TV to an 8-figure salary as an action hero.
Our first actor is Jodie Foster, American, age 28. She started acting at the age of 4, was a child star in Disney movies, made some commercials, grew up in a hurry by playing a street kid and Taxi Driver in 1976. She won the Academy Award for The Accused in 1989. She's a Yale graduate who wants to be a director and is currently directing Little Man Tate. She has a reputation as one of the smartest actors in Hollywood.
Our second choice, Bruce Willis, American, age 36. He started out serious and unknown on the stage in New York, became known in a hurry as the star of TV's Moonlighting, considered one of the best television programs of recent years. Superstardom came seemingly overnight with the Die Hard movies, which have grossed almost $500 million. He now commands one of the biggest paychecks in Hollywood, but he does make time for smaller, more serious films he also believes in.
And our third actor is Michael Caine, British, age 58, a Cockney from the East End of London who got his first big movie role at the age of 30 in Zulu, became famous quickly in The Ipcris File and Alfie. He won the Academy Award in 1986 for Hannah and Her Sisters. He works constantly, has made more than 60 movies, and taught a master class on the BBC on the art of film acting. He later wrote a book on the subject. Caine is considered to be as articulate on the science and craft of acting as anyone alive.
The format we chose was to ask each of the actors the same questions, and you can compare their answers. First question, what are some of the choices you've made as an actor playing a specific scene, and how might you have played it differently?
There's a scene in The Silence of the Lambs, for example, where he has... I think I'm getting very hot cocky now because I've given him this little thing, and I think he's going to make it out, and he's going to write all the answers to me, and then I'm going to be the hero of the FBI. And he very calmly and coolly says, you know what you look like to me? You look like a rube with your good bag and your cheap shoes, and goes on this sort of litany of real truths, of things that are really repulsive. This character hates about herself, her commonness.
But you're not more than one generation from poor wire trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner, the stinkable land? No.
And instead of saying, bastard, how could you say these things to me at the end of it? She just as calmly and coolly, although with a certain kind of vulnerability in her voice, says, you see a lot. You see a lot, Doctor. When are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself? Why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're right. It's a more sophisticated moment than, my child, my husband, my life. To me, I think that's more interesting than the big flashy, guerrilla numbers.
Name another way that scene could have gone when he is taking your inventory from head to toe.
Well, I could have cried, and I could have looked at my hands, and I could have looked incredibly hurt and not played the complexity of wanting to be strong for him, I could have been incredibly vulnerable and quite really hurt by it in ways that are very demonstrative. And then at the end, when I come back to him, I could have given him a strong retort that was nasty or something.
I thought it must be very difficult to do a scene like when you're threatening to slide right out the window, and you have to act that. Now, can you talk about how technically you act that?
I don't know if I can actually tell you what was going on in my mind. I was scared. I thought that I pretended. A big part of my job is to pretend and to believe what I am pretending to myself. I was scrambling not to fall out the window.
Are you this mechanical where you're thinking, you know, when you grimace or whatever, it could be too big? Are you aware of that?
Not in that film. I am not aware of my best takes. My best takes, my favorite takes, are the ones where things happen spontaneously that I'm not aware of. I got cut on the wrist. I mean, I'm okay, but I got cut, you know, during that scene. And I looked down and I had all this kind of fake, you know, stage blood on me that, you know, these guys put on. And I actually cut myself. And I said, oh, this is real blood. This is really me. And I used that. And little things happened. And there is a take in the film that is just that much more real because something spontaneous happened.
There's a scene on the stairs with Larry Olivier and Sleuth.
Yeah. You're in the clown outfit.
Wearing the clown, and he's going to shoot me.
I can't give anything back. Can I? I mean, if it hadn't been me, it would have been somebody else. Please. I'll go away. You won't never hear me no more.
I'd seen a lot of people with, you know, the man holding a gun saying, you know, I'm going to kill you, you know, and they sort of go, oh, please don't, you know, don't kill me. But I thought, I'd never seen it done hysterically.
Why, Andrew? Why me?
Don't snivel.
I'm not know why.
I think very rarely would you find anybody at a moment like that who would have the courage not to cry. So that's the choice I made there.
That's right. Everybody's very cool when they're looking at a gun, aren't they?
That's what always struck me about movies, you know, because I was a soldier in Korea when I was 19. And then when I saw people dying on the screen, I thought, it's not quite the way people react.
When I read the script of In Country, there were 3 scenes in there that I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with them. And it kind of scared me. And I knew that when I got to that day, I would have done X amount of days of acting as the character, and hopefully by that time I would have figured out what I'm going to do in this very emotional, wrenching scene. And I trusted myself, and I said, I will figure it out when that time comes. The scene in the woods, there was great potential there to overact it and to really chew the scenery and just, you know, wail and gnash my, you know, gnashing of teeth. And they're all still alive. You know that? In my head. They're all sitting around a village. It's all burnt out. Eating ham and mother waiting for the Huey to come and evacuate us. They got a dead DC propped up against a hooch with a cowboy hat on and a cigarette stuck in his mouth. You're wondering where is old Emmett? Norman Jewison really directed me more than anyone else has ever directed me. He led me through those scenes, and what could have been a very kind of overdone emotional thing, I think he helped me find the dignity of those scenes.
There is the dancing scene in The Accused, which I think is probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, because it was very important for me, and this is what I thought about before I did it, you know, it's very important for me to have this one moment in her life be the most beautiful moment in her life. You know, the question in that scene was, how do I dance? Now, do I dance like I totally don't know any of those other people are there, and that way, you know, it turns into the sort of, well, she didn't know. So she didn't deserve it because she didn't know. Does she act totally and entirely drunk so that she's not responsible for her actions? And she didn't deserve it because she's not responsible for her actions. I didn't want to step back and say, it'll be too controversial if I act this way, or I'll deserve it if I'll deserve to have cruelty heaped upon me if I act this way. Because the truth is that nobody deserves cruelty, and that statement had to be made only by hitting it in the head, and only by really, really observing it.
Coming up, their best performances.
Actors talking about acting, the next question we put to Michael Caine, Jodie Foster, and Bruce Willis was to criticize themselves and pick the best performance of their career.
Oh boy, I don't really know. I mean, I think that the more obvious one I think is the scene in The Accused where she's having a dinner party and I come in and disrupt it.
You don't understand how I feel. I'm standing there with my pants down and my crotch hung out for the world to see, and 3 guys are sticking it to me, and a bunch of other guys are yelling and clapping, and you're standing there telling me that that's the best you can do. That's the best you can do, and your best sucks.
What's so special about that to you?
Well, is that it is unbridled, entirely unapologetic rage. And that's something you don't see with women characters. I mean, you definitely see it with men because they go, you know, there's a lot of that. But this entirely well-informed rage, that's the rage of a century, a rage of not being given a voice, not being allowed to speak, of being, you know, looked at as a victim, being betrayed by another woman. There's something I like about that.
My best performance on film was Educating Rita. This clever, pyrotechnical pile of self-conscious illusion is worthless, talentless. There is more poetry in the telephone directory. Actors usually steal from their own characters, and there was nothing I could steal from mine for that.
So that was completely made up from...
Completely made up from a composite. I had a friend who was a teacher and a friend who was an alcoholic, and I put them together.
But that film is so different from you that when you watch it, you...
I don't recognize the guy as anything but a complete stranger. I can't see anything of me in there at all. Nothing.
I really like the work that I did in Mortal Thoughts.
I like tea, okay? I like coffee. I can't take it without sugar. She knows this. How long we been married? 5 years? I know her another 3 years before that. You think she could figure this out? How hard is it for me to get some sugar in my own house? How hard is it?
I think it is the freest work that I've done in the last couple of years. I also like the work that I did in Country. There's a scene at the end of that film. It's just a very simple moment and just a very real moment. I didn't have to act it. I didn't have to search for it. It just kind of came through me.
Are you talking about when you lay the objects at the grave?
I put a pack of cigarettes down. That scene, more than any other scene in the film, I think, had a really profound effect on the Vietnam veterans who saw it. I mean, they all commented on that. They all said, man, I've been right there. I have been right where you were and right in that thing. And I said, well, this is good. Then I guess what I was doing was on the right track. There aren't a lot of people who come up to me and said, well, you know, when you were hanging from that in the air shaft, I mean, that was me. I've done that. You know, you don't get the same kind of response.
What do you consider your breakthrough performance, the one that kicked you into high gear?
I think before I did Die Hard, I don't think anyone ever really saw me as an action hero. Oops. No bullets. Stupid Hans.
You were saying? Now, when someone becomes a star off of a big picture and an unexpected star at that level, frequently what I found is that there's something in that character that they play that is very close to what they are like, and that mix is just very exciting.
I think you have to be an interesting person in real life. There has to be some interesting things about you, that, you know, likable things, humorous things, serious things, honest things. You can't pretend to be honest. You can't pretend to be sincere. I think audiences are too smart for that.
What was your big breakthrough performance? Not necessarily the one where you became first a household name or successful, but the one where you thought, I've got it now.
Well, it was a Ebert file.
What has happened to you, Palmer?
One of you knows exactly what has happened to me. One of you is a double agent.
You're right, Palmer. Who wanted you to microfilm the Ebert file?
Up until then, I didn't know that, you know, I'd been an actor for 12 years. I was 30 years old. I didn't even know if I had a future. And when Ebert file came out, I knew.
Now, in that film, one of the things that I enjoyed about it was that, in a way, Harry Palmer is funny.
Oh, yeah.
But without ever being funny.
I was stationed in Berlin, and I was making rather a lot of money out of the German army, and they insisted that the British army made an example of me.
What did you do?
Oh, it's very complicated.
Seems to impress Rob.
Well, it impressed me.
Boys, he got me where he wants me. Still, it's better than 2 years in jail.
The food's terrible there.
I think movie comedy is impossible if you haven't figured it out right, and very easy if you have. And the answer is never leave the character. If you try to be funny, I mean, it's terribly painful.
Baxter was the first time that I think I ever was asked to really construct a character that wasn't myself, and that was very different for me. And I think Robert De Niro had a lot to do with that.
I tried to get into your cab one night, and now you want to come and take me away. Is that easy?
Yeah, but don't you want to go?
I can leave any time I want to.
Well, then what about that one night?
Look, I was stoned. That's why they stopped me. Because when I'm not stoned, I got no place else to go.
Basically, I think De Niro just sort of took me around, and we kept rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing, and I finally figured out he was sort of trying to get me out of my skin and get me to think as the character in some ways. But the great thing about De Niro that I learned from him, which I think a lot of quote-unquote method actors or studied actors tend to forget, is that he was very adamant about always knowing what the text was. And the text was very important. And it was only by really knowing the text in a way that was just so, I mean, he could have said it wrote in his sleep, that he could depart from it in a way that was spontaneous. Because he never had to think about how to get back into the lines, because he knew the lines. I think a lot of young actors think that the best kind of realistic performances is fumbling through your lines and not really ever learning them and never knowing what the next word is. When in fact, I think he had a great respect for writers.
Next, their favorite stars. Get ready for an eye drop so refreshing you won't believe your eyes.
Wow.
Look for Visine.
Already learning about the art of acting by studying other actors. We asked Caine, Foster, and Willis to talk about some of the actors they learned from the most and some of today's actors that they admire the most.
Cary Grant is probably my hero.
I like Dustin and Robert De Niro.
Meryl Streep, obviously, and Robert De Niro.
I like Spencer Tracy.
Tom Cruise. In The Rain Man, he carried that picture, you know. When you see him, he picked that picture up and carried it, you know. Dustin had the showy part. But unless you're a professional, you couldn't see what he was doing there, which was fabulous.
What was he doing? Can you tell me about a scene?
He had picked the picture up on his shoulders and carried the whole damn thing through. He'd set the atmosphere, set the reality, set everything.
You read all these stories that are in this book, and you don't know if you read the book.
Oh, you're in.
You don't know.
Maybe you better put it back.
You don't know.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But because he's good looking, you know, he'll have to wait till he gets about my age and he's ugly, and then he'll say he's a brilliant actor.
Is that a bit of a handicap because people look at you and think they know what they're seeing and don't look any harder?
Yeah, they just look. It's especially true of women. You know, they see beautiful women and they don't know what is there. But I mean, I think Tom is a supreme example of that.
Like Spencer Tracy.
And why?
Some of my favorite acting is just stillness, is just watching and listening to people, and he just had it.
Joanna told her mother as soon as she walked in, and I had the stupid idea that maybe there was some way to break this gently.
It's a very difficult thing to do, to do it honestly and to do it simply. I'm a big fan of simple acting. Cary Grant, I like too. Cary Grant is probably my hero.
Now you listen to me. I have no intention of moving in 30 days. This is not legal. I'm going to fight this thing, and I don't care if it takes every penny I've got. Yeah. All right.
Well?
We're moving in 30 days.
He did it in the three big arenas: in action, in comedy, and in serious drama. I mean, those are the ones that I care about. Those are the ones that I'm still trying to see whether or not I can accomplish.
The two great American actors of our generation, the most versatile and the most moving and transcendent in what they do, I think, is Meryl Streep, obviously, and Robert De Niro. I think that they've gone places and moved in places that shouldn't just be called acting. I guess they're just doing something else. I don't really even understand. It's so great.
What do they do that you would like to do?
There's a few moments in Cry in the Dark, Meryl Streep, where I just, I was never aware that it was her, and there was absolutely nothing in me that believed that it wasn't this woman who's standing there talking to me.
Can you think of one of those scenes?
Yeah, I know it's the moment where she's pregnant and it's hot.
You have to turn the air conditioning off. I'm cold.
You can't possibly be cold.
I'm freezing.
Then put a blanket on yourself.
I don't want to put a blanket on myself right heavy.
Leave it on roasting. Don't forget, I've got a little furnace blazing away in here. If you want my company, then put a blanket on.
She's burning up, and she's sweaty, and she's disgusted, and she's been through this whole thing, and her husband is starting to lose his faith, and that's the one thing that he held on to, and he's resenting her. And he resents her so much that he's complaining about the air conditioning.
Oh, love, it wouldn't have made any difference.
We should have got it fixed. And we should have seen to it that it was zipped up.
Well, what about that other dingo they told us about? Clawed its way through the tent to get some food.
We should have zipped up the tent.
You mean I should have zipped it up? Isn't that what you mean? Say it, for God's sake!
It's subtle moments like that. There are small moments that when an actor finds the truth in a small moment, I think in some ways it's one of the most heroic things ever. When they find the truth in a moment that in some ways is repulsive and disgusting, is that it's the closest to a real intimate human experience that an audience can have with an actor.
Can you think of a scene like that with De Niro?
Oh, yeah. Oh, the scene that we will always remember. The only time I've ever cried in the middle of a movie, nonstop, I think was in The Deer Hunter, with the Russian roulette scene.
Oh. Go ahead, Mickey. Go ahead. Go it. Go ahead.
For some reason, I'm haunted by that, and I'll never forget it.
Coming up, their mistakes.
You curl it. Talking about acting, the next question we put to Michael Caine, Jodie Foster, and Bruce Willis was, what have been some of the mistakes you made? For Jodie Foster, it's been working with unhappy people.
There are certain filming shoots, you know, that I wish I hadn't been on. That were a little on the miserable side.
Such as?
Oh, I wouldn't really go into it. But, you know, sometimes you can get on a shoot where people are just not having a good time and where the director is just yelling constantly right in your face and where everything is abusive and no one cares and nobody cares about their craft, and I'd rather be home.
Are those films usually bad films when they...
Almost always bad films. Always.
You told me that you chose not to do the movie Ghost.
Yes.
Would you call that a mistake?
No, I don't think so. Well, what you have to understand is on you know, the page, you know, the typewritten page, that story seemed almost impossible to make an audience believe, and yet look what happened. My wife saw something in that script that I just didn't see. I didn't quite get it. I didn't know how. I frankly didn't know how to play a ghost. I didn't know how to be interesting as that guy, as that character.
Bonfire of the Vanities. Some people would say, boy, that was a mistake.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20. Brian De Palma interpreted this film. When you take one art form and try and translate it into another art form, it is that. It is a translation. This is not the Tom Wolfe film. This is the Brian De Palma film of Tom Wolfe's story.
But you know, Gone with the Wind had similar casting stories written about it. An even more popular book. And yet, they pulled that off. So I don't think you can say that the naysayers or the second guessers are all that. They're totally responsible.
No, it's... I don't know. We did say while we were shooting that film do you think anybody in America is going to really give it about these crazy New Yorkers and about how these people live and how these snooty rich people live and what happens to them? I like the movie.
What was your biggest mistake as a film actor?
My biggest mistake as a film actor was not coming to live in Los Angeles 5 years before I did. That was a big mistake.
Do you think if you had done that, your career would have been materially different?
Yeah, I do think so, yeah. Sure. Because I would have become more of a recognized American actor.
Is there a character that you absolutely shouldn't have played, a role that you should not have taken?
I should never have done Jaws 4.
Passengers, you're all the same. Complain.
I suppose I shouldn't have done The Swarm either, but I needed to buy a house.
We've been fighting a losing battle against the insects for 15 years. But I never thought I'd see the final face-off in my lifetime. And I never dreamed that it would turn out to be the bees. They've always been our friends.
See, Jaws 4 and The Swarm strike me as the kinds of movies that you missed out on, perhaps by not coming to Hollywood 5 years earlier.
I might have done Jaws 1.
Next, tricks of the trade.
Are tricks or techniques that can be learned by an actor? Favorite ways of doing things? What happens when a technique goes over the line into a habit or becomes a mannerism? We asked our actors to look at themselves and talk about some of the tricks of their trade and also the things they try to avoid. All of them pointed out that many actors forget how important it is to use your eyes.
You see a lot on television, people not choosing an eye. Not choosing an eye is this. I'm looking from one eye to the other on you now. But so you say, well, we choose an eye. Well, if I choose that eye, that's there. Taking that eye to the space. If I choose that eye, it's there. It's taking that eye to the lens, which is over there. That's a trick.
Now, the problem is the moment you bring this up to me, now I'm extremely conscious. Am I looking at your eyes? Am I looking at your mouth? Am I looking away? In movie acting, this has to be...
You've been very natural up until now.
Up until now? Now I don't know what to do. But in movie acting, that's a craft that has to be learned, right? You have to be able to do it naturally, or there'll be something fishy about you on the screen.
Yeah, if you start moving your eyes like this, But what it is, and also if you blink a lot, it signifies the audience will get weakness. If you're going, I'm talking to you like this, and I'm going like that, and it annoys. But if you hold a person's eyes, it gradually builds.
I have more power in this hand than all you know.
And so you've got their attention.
So does that make you a more interesting actor for the audience?
Not if I'm not talented or the part's bad or something. I mean, that's just a trick. But what it does, it just helps.
Well, there are certain things that help you be cut well. Like, for example, something that I only learned, 4 weeks ago in the cutting room, or, a month ago in the cutting room, but that I always did unconsciously, which is, a certain amount of eye contact. Because ultimately, you can't cut to a character unless there's some kind of eye contact, or unless there's a reason for them to be looking away or something. But if you have an actor who's talking and then goes, yeah, and then, like all over the place, you'll never be able to cut back to them. So, certain things like that I think that you develop.
Mr. Bias, while you were being gang raped on that pinball machine, what were you thinking?
Thinking?
Yes, what were you thinking? What words came into your head? 3 men were repeatedly raping you, holding you down, and raping you, and their friends cheered and clapped, and you lay there naked in a bed, struggling, weeping every part of you in pain. What words came into your head? What words?
No.
Now, I've seen you, though, turn your head a lot. In Die Hard, you're turning. Are you aware of that?
If there's something going on up there, if you're paying attention to it, then the audience is going to think about that too, and they're going to go outside of that talking head, and you can take their attention somewhere else just by going.
Tell her that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me. She's heard me say I love you 1,000 times. She never heard me say I'm sorry.
I guess what I'm saying is the classic image of the Hollywood close-up is sometimes offensive to me.
Is there something that in acting, in film, that you still have difficulty with? That when this is coming up, you say, uh-oh, I still haven't solved that problem. It could be something as simple as entering a room. It could be, I'm told that's very difficult.
It is. In the beginning, I never used to know what to do with my hands. And no one ever says anything about that to you in acting classes, and you can go back and look at the first year of Moonlighting, and I always was doing something with my hands. I always had them like this, or I would be standing in a scene and have my hands like this with my fingers crossed, or some weird thing. I just didn't know what to do with them.
You really want to get away from me all that
You
bad?
can't begin to know. What's so funny?
You need me, Matty.
I need you to leave.
You need me to live, lady.
What do you do now with your hands? You stop thinking about it?
I stopped thinking about it. I just let them be. Kind of gotten into a scratching mode lately in films. I caught myself in Mortal Thoughts doing that a couple times. I did a little scratch homage to Marlon Brando, who I just saw. I think I just saw about 5 months ago. Streetcar Named Desire again. And man, he was always scratching, and he was around here, and he'd scratch his nose from over here, and he'd be doing things. And I said, yeah, I like that.
Are you aware of any techniques that actors use that you think are foolish, and when you go to the movies you say, oh, they're doing that, and I can see them doing that, and I would never do that?
I think it's not necessarily techniques that I think are foolish. I think it's usually about them being self-conscious about something. There are a lot of actors that are self-conscious about, their body or something. So they walk into a room like that, and they turn like this, like RoboCop or something. They start looking like these stiff mannequins because they're so concerned about their tummy or their shoulders or their chin or something like that. And what you end up having is a very ungiving, very ungenerous performance. And there are a lot of people who, for example, who are just so concerned with having the audience like them and think that they're sexy that they don't do anything but smolder in a shallow way.
Do you have any devices or techniques that you've sort of retired from your repertory?
Oh, no, I mean, there are certainly the commercials.
Dad!
Jodie?
A checkup. Jimmy only had 2 cavities, and I didn't have any.
Gee, Dad, I only had 5 cavities. I only had 2 cavities instead of 1. All that kind of stuff. I kind of don't do that.
Coming up, the biz in showbiz.
Break the mold. Taste the cold of diet.
Show on actors talking about acting. We asked Jodie Foster, Michael Caine, and Bruce Willis to talk about who they turn to for advice, who helps them control their own career. How do you control your career? And with you, compared with the other people we're going to be talking with, there has been a main player, a main advisor, and that would be your mother.
Yes.
Can you talk about, I mean, it sounds like it's the greatest agent you could possibly have, the greatest manager you could have, because there's unqualified love.
Unqualified love, and also she wanted me to have a quality career, and she wanted me to be happy.
It's much more treacherous turning your career over to a manager or an agent.
Or, yeah, and I feel a little sorry for kids that are out there, you know, they're 15 or 16 years old, and they're being, you know, scooped up by photographers and flown all over the world unattended, or being made to do dumb movies that somebody tells them they're going to make a lot of money, when in fact, you know, they're going to end up ruining their career. I was glad that I was sheltered from them for somebody who really wanted me ultimately to have a satisfying and fulfilled life.
Did she ever say, don't do something that you did?
No, no, not in terms of my career particularly. But, you know, she doesn't have that kind of a, you know, controlling, treacherous way about her at all.
Do you control your career?
Yeah.
You don't do things that...
That's why it's so terrible. I wish someone else would. No, yeah, I do. I mean, I have agents and I have an agent and everything, that people who I confide in or go to for advice. But I don't have people say, you've got to do this or anything. No, I'm not.
Do you have the power to get a movie made?
No, not nowadays. I did it one time when movies were cheaper. But they're so expensive now. You know, the decision to make most films now is made by a producer, a stunt chief, and a set designer on how much money can we really find the money to build and do this stuff. I do the least wanted commodity in movies, which is called acting.
Well, how do you keep control? I mean, who helps you keep control?
I have a very good agent.
What did this guy, why don't we mention his name?
Arnold Rifkin.
Arnold Rifkin. What has he done for you lately? What's specifically?
Arnold Rifkin has made me a very wealthy man. I have taken a lot of flack and had reams and reams of things written about how much money I make. Do I deserve it? Do I not deserve it? I've probably said no to more money than I've earned, and a lot of that is due to him, because he says, I can't let you do this. It's just too stupid. It's just too...
You're talking about ads, commercials? Are you talking about film?
Cheapo films. I mean, I was offered a couple years ago some outrageous money.
Do you want to get specific about what film and how much?
I don't even know. At the time, I think I was offered $17 million to do a film that I don't even know the name of. It was an independent film, and they were just trying to capitalize off the success of Die Hard 1.
It was probably in one of these international action pictures?
It wasn't an action picture at all. It was a romance. They were trying to make some kind of... It was baffling. The film has never been made, and for good reason. But I mean, I was blown away by it, and he said to me, he said, look, I have to tell you about this because it's my job, and I have to say that these people want to offer you this much money to do this thing, and I have to show it to you, and I don't think you should do it.
Next, why be an actor?
At the top of this program, you said that critics don't often talk about acting, and on our own program, where we have clips from the movies right there, we sometimes don't get very specific or technical either.
Exactly.
What did you learn about acting that you didn't know even after 20 years as a movie critic from talking to these people?
Well, there's one very specific thing, and I applied it on a movie I just saw recently called Backdraft, a firefighter film. I watched the actor William Baldwin turn his head. This show got me to watch now their head and eyes in a way that I haven't watched it before. And he had what I found kind of an annoying habit of always going to the same side. He turns right like 90% of the time, looking for inspiration or some kind of variance, but he doesn't vary it. He doesn't use his head well, I thought, because of the show.
So because you were talking to these people, you became very super alert to that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
You know, one thing that I learned, I can't think of an actor who I think of as more of a natural than Michael Caine. He always seems relaxed. He seems at home in a scene. He never seems at a loss for what to do next or how to behave. And I was surprised to find how much thought he's put into technique and into specific things, like where his eye should be, or whether he should blink, or what he should do to express an emotion, because somehow he makes it look so easy, and I guess that's what all good actors do, that you don't think that they ever give it a moment's thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of work. I once had Cary Grant a long time ago tell me about the technique of placing down a glass. You place it on one edge and then tilt it down so it doesn't make any noise. All of these people know all of that tricks in addition to having these sort of remarkable personalities. Now a final thought from our actors. The final question put to each of them, why act? What's the pleasure? What's the value? What's the compulsion?
I think you become what you're afraid of. I was a painfully shy person, terribly shy, not at all. You know, little Johnny will now get up and give you his party piece. Those are the guys who are never going to be actors, believe me. And then I kept going to see movies, and what struck me in England is that all the American movies were about working class heroes, and all the British movies were all sort of terribly upper crust people who I didn't know anything about. And whenever a character of my class, like working class Cockney Londoner, would come on, it looked to me rather as a sort of racist almost characterization. And I think I've got to get up there and change that.
It's a gift to be able to entertain someone. It's a gift to be able to make someone laugh, or to make them look at something in a different way, or to make people cry, to make them, it's all magic what we do. I mean, 600 people go into a dark room and they flash little colored lights against this big white screen. And 15 minutes later, if it's a good film, you're there, man. You are in that world. You are in Vietnam. You are in New York. You are in wherever it is. And it's magic. It's magic. And I still think it's magic.
I think it's very important what art is about allowing an audience to be a part or to deepen in an experience that they haven't had. And that's the actor's legacy, is that they become intimate with something for you. And in some ways you can come to know it vicariously through them in a way that's not as scary.
Is that something an actor can enjoy, the opportunity in a role to do things that he wouldn't have license to do?
That's one of the great things of it. That's one of the great things you have over everyone else. You can indulge in all these fantasies and get paid fantasy money.
Well, those are some good reasons they enjoy their work. Why don't you pick some movies of theirs available on home video that people might not normally think to rent, but you think are very good?
Well, Bruce Willis, of course, has spent most of his career on Moonlighting, a very good program. He doesn't have a lot of stuff on video. I think his current film, Mortal Thoughts, which is out right now, is a very good film, and when it comes on video, I would recommend it. With Jodie Foster in 1980, she made a movie called Foxes, directed by Adrian Lyne, the same man who made Fatal Attraction. It was about a group of wayward teenage girls. She was kind of the mother hen. It's a sleeper. I liked it very much. And for Michael Caine, I go back to the one that he says he discovered himself in, the Ebert file. It's a terrific spy thriller. It's really a lot of fun.
With Michael Caine, I would pick A Shock to the System from 1990. He played a advertising man, a working class, not working class, a little upper echelon guy, but totally alienated from work. Good job. Also, I'll pick a Jodie Foster film from 1980, Caine, where she played a country girl using her sexuality in the circus tent area. And for Bruce Willis, I like the one he picked, In Country. I think Bruce Willis isn't thought enough as a good, serious actor, just the action star. In Country is really fine work.
Okay, that's it for the special show on Actors on Acting. And if we were in our balcony, it would now be closed.
Enjoy a wild, wonderful swing and sing adventure with a Walt Disney Classic.